Now I will go with my power ratchet and tighten those guys up. That one at the bottom. Then I have to look up and see if there's a torque spit. Oh man, that's a problem. That broke off. That's a problem. That definitely is a problem. That's a problem I do not want to have. Is that, man, I should have used the hand ratchet to get that in. Gosh, man. I guess there is a torque spit and it's not tight. I didn't know that ratchet had that much power. It just wrung that head right off. And I know for a fact that's gonna leak. Guess I'll run it through and oh, now I can see where you're supposed to add the ATF fluid. Right there, instead of through the dipstick hole. Goes right there. That's cool. Well, that is a problem, man. Pressure, man. I should not have put that on with the ratchet. Let's see. Take off with ratchet, put on by hand. It's rough, bro. It's rough. Let's get it off. Let's get him back off. I'll have to buy a $800 drill to do it with. So yeah, this banjo boat's all clogged up with that material, and that was the problem right here. This is why the transmission was acting up. It's because the banjo boat is all clogged up. Some brake cleaner. Trying to get this out of here. Let me get one of my snap-on picks. I don't want the pick to break off in here. I want these holes to be clear. Get all this junk out of here. You see all that stuff that's in there? That's why the transmission's running like crap. Get a straight pick. Oh man, it's gunked up, bro. That's the main hole where it comes out of. Yep, that's what got most of it. Let's see if we can push it down. Get it out of there. Alright, well, it's going to take me a while to clean all this mess out of here. So, in the meantime, yeah, it's a lot of it in there. I'll stop the video and come back when I got it cleaned up. My banjo bolt is clear. If I could get that back together, this thing would shift like a dream. So before, when I did that, you couldn't even see light coming out of the holes. I had to bang that out with my pick, a lot of brake cleaner, got it cleaned out, and I might put this thing back together. I don't want to put it back together without addressing this, because they have 3 bolts on it for a reason, so I'm pretty sure it's going to leak. And how this works is this bolt threads in to here. It's not like it's grabbing. Now, if this was grabbing something, threads on the inside of that, I would be golden, but it's not. It's just threading into here and it hits the center of the filter, and all the fluid is forced into here and out through that collar that goes around it. This doesn't get thread all the way in. It's probably about out like that. It would be good to go, but that's just not all built in, that it's a removable part. I'm just glad it's a removable part. So that's nice. What size is that? That's one of my ratchets. My big snap-on ratchet. Break it free with my big flex head. Okay. Yeah, I really need a I need my universal socket. Number 12. That's 14, so that should be a 12. Filter's falling out. You guys aren't even in the shot. Oh, let me mark these if they're different lengths. The first one, yeah, these are different lengths. So the long one came out of the back, out of the front, and the shorter one was in the back. Okay, so there's the bracket that had this hose that went to nowhere that I don't know. I'll put this over on the table. And that's what happens when you work on cars. Sometimes stuff breaks and you gotta fix it. So now we're fixing. I ain't gonna be able to do this on camera. I can't, the camera angle. Alright, so my body cam, the battery's going dead anyway. So I'll show you what I had did, because this is like, I think this is real important, because people always show you videos of how to take stuff apart like this filter, but they don't show you the parts that went wrong. So I used a ratchet that went wrong. It broke. That had a screw that broke, one of these little screws, and now I have to remove this whole piece so that I can drill and tap that out. So I had to remove the bracket, which was in the last video, and with that video cut off, I was right here trying to get that last bolt out. Now I have used my paint markers to color coat the holes and the bolts because they're different sizes. So what I have done is when I remove a bolt, I'm marking them with the colors. So that's what the colors. What the tool I had to use was this. To get that last bolt, I had to use my flex head. I kind of had it in this configuration going back, and with a mid-length socket. The short socket wasn't long enough to reach it, and the deep socket was too deep. to go underneath the wire harness because I didn't want to remove the wire harness. But I did take the wire harness off of its mounting plate back there. So that's where I'm at right now. Once you do that, you can remove this part of this filter assembly. I think this is all part of like the torque converter and stuff. And then you can start to see, I got my under the hood light. That's where the light's coming from up top, then a spotlight. So there's like 3 blue bolts that have to be removed. And I believe this whole guy will come off. I left the hoses on here because I wanted to make this as easy as possible. And so you can see there's one right there. There's a bolt right beside the blue paint. Focus isn't very good, but there's a bolt right there. And then there's another one, and you can't see these other ones until you remove this top piece. It's inside of it. So 2 of them are outside of it and 1 of them is inside. So you do have to remove this whole thing. So you can't, which is kind of important, right? Because if you were just prying on that thing, you would mess it up. It's just cast aluminum. So I can't hold the phone and do this at the same time, but you see what I'm working with. I'm about to remove those bolts and I'll start back. I'll keep this going so you guys can see what happens when stuff goes wrong. All right, so I did have a gasket on it. This is the gasket. You can see like bluish color. I'll take the light away, maybe you can see that blue. That's the color of the coolant in the system. And that's, sorry. Well, maybe I had the wrong size clamp, but that clamp didn't work, that Craftsman one. But I got this Blue Point one down here, which is smaller than that one, and it worked pretty good. But that Craftsman one, I had to switch out and go with one of my Blue Point PHPs, and sometimes those don't clamp down good enough either. The old school good versions of those like kind of work the best. Those are easy to use, and I ended up having to plug the line with a 10mm Pittsburgh socket to stop the drip. And I got that Blue Point on there. So I took off the cooler. Those were radiator lines going in and out of that, help keeping that transmission fluid cool. So this is basically like, it's an oil cooler, and the filter is like the filter. And you can still see my colors from where I marked everything. But I had to move that out of the way because I saw a silver ring after I removed the after I removed this bottom part. There's just like a random washer looking thing just laying underneath it, and I don't know where it goes at, or if it's from something else, but it doesn't seem to go anywhere with this assembly. But it's just like a random washer. Now we could take a look and you can kind of see what kind of holds that spring in place that I took apart. And these are just the channels for the tranny fluid. And those other holes are the bolt holes that help hold this thing down. So now that I have this out, I can work on all that just so I can extract that screw. And we'll see how that goes. I know I can stick it in my vise and just cover it with a rag and work on it. Just, really softly, and get this out so that I can put this back together. Good morning, guys. I'm cleaning my truck out, getting it ready for my day. Still got about an hour to extract that. And as it turns out, the bolt is just soft, and how I got Well, I hadn't taken the screw out yet, but I can show you how I'm getting the screw out. I'm just using the pick and using the pick and turning it out. So I guess the bolt was already weakened or damaged from age or previous attempt, but I was able to just take my pick and grab on the edge, and it was it's not in there tight. So that tells me that it was it didn't break because the ratchet just put so much torque on it and it snapped it because it wasn't tight, or maybe it did, but I'm just glad that it wasn't tight. I can just take my pliers and take it out the rest of the way. And go find another screw like this. It was in pretty good. So maybe it got kind of tight and snapped off because it was most of the way in. So didn't have to tear up the threads or anything. So now my is a gasket, which I'll probably just glue this back on and reuse it because I cannot find this gasket anywhere. And it doesn't seem like the intermediate parts, the webbing of the gasket, is doing anything. It's just sealing the holes because it's just kind of free floating. So I'll just take a very thin layer of sealant and make that stick and reuse that gasket, put this baby back together, take it for a test drive, and continue to, more transmission fluid. I'm gonna drain and fill this until I get red fluid coming out of here, and then I know that this transmission will be good for the next 30,000 miles, and we'll start keeping a schedule of changing the fluid every 30,000 miles, which is what the spec in the book says. So glad I didn't try to like rush through it and work on it all night, because it's not good to do that. I'd rather get a good fresh start and don't be frustrated and start on it again. So I will start working on my gasket, putting that back together. And I still have not solved the mystery of this, which is kind of reminiscent of a crush washer. And I could tell from the indent that there was a pretty big, something pretty large was holding that down. And I'm thinking that whoever overfilled the transmission, when they put that fluid in there, they didn't either left out this gasket or replaced it with, yeah, I think they left it out. I'm about to pull that. And then it was just, maybe it dropped under the AT warmer filter housing assembly and they couldn't get it. I believe it's non-ferrous. And yeah, it's non-ferrous. And they just said, screw it. And they put the ATF cap back on without the washer. And that's where that came from. So I'll be putting the washer back on. Used to go like that. It is a perfect fit. And that used to be assembled like so. So, yeah. All right. So my setup is still the same. I don't know if I showed it, but from yesterday, I like to load out my cart with the tools that I'm using. So this is, you can see, I pulled out my little snap-on drill. I was gonna try to drill that out. I'm glad that I I didn't, and that I took it completely out because it was very easy to extract the broken bolt. So I'm glad I did my due diligence and just didn't try to shortcut it and just remove that part. All right, guys, so let me get back at it. I'll be back. All right, so went to my truck and got one of my little bolt kits, and I determined that the M6 is the thread. I just took one of the M6 bolts, and these are probably stronger than the bolts that they use anyway, but like I said, this is just cast aluminum, so as you can see, so that's how I knew it was M6. And I have it sitting over here. I took my Sharpie and kind of marked it off to the height of the threads. Okay, and what I did, and then I'll just cut that bolt off. I'll see if I could cut it off with some of like my wire strippers have bolt cutters on them. If that doesn't work, I'll just grind it off. I'll just put it on a grinding wheel. All right, and then out of that same kit, I dropped one of these flange washers when I was taking the battery apart and I didn't find it. So I got, these are M6 threads too. So I just put a washer and a M6 nut to replace the two things that got missing or damaged. So now I'll fix that. I'll make this bolt up, get it ready, test fit it. And then the beauty of, since I have this already apart, I can put the filter housing and everything together out here before I even put it in the vehicle. So I can like do it standing up. My spring will be nice and straight, and I'll go ahead and put everything together out here before I put it back in the vehicle. I would have been able to put the whole assembly together, but of course they put a nuisance bolt inside of the assembly to where if you don't take this off first, you'll never get this off. It will trick you because most of the bolts are exposed, but there's one bolt that's inside here that you can't get to. So, yep, I'll be back. I didn't want to mess up my cutters. I know they're not intended for this, and I think this is like a grade 4 bolt, but I'm not messing up any of my cutters cutting this cheap bolt. I'll just use my grinder and have it set up in my vise, old Bessie, and I'll just cut it off a little bit above my line and then use the diamond wheel. This is that IPA diamond wheel. This thing's been going strong for a long time. I use it for all kinds of stuff. Totally recommend it on my 14.4 straight grinder. I think I'll buy an angle one. It can come in handy. Sometimes I can't get the right angle with the straight, so maybe I'll invest in an angle one as well. Okay, so I don't want to leave this step out. Now, after I grind down the bolt, it leaves like a burr on the edge, so I kind of hit it a little bit, but it still wouldn't start. So I just run it through my thread maker with my tap and die set. So I just took it and run it through a little bit, couple turns till it kind of cut that first thread. And after I did that, it's able to catch and go in. This is my left hand, but after I did that, as you can see, it threads right in. If you don't do that step, you're gonna have a very hard time getting it to start, you know, because the way the bolt works is it starts at a thread, and you need yours to do the same. So I did my best to eyeball it, to grind it down to where it's starting at a thread, and then when it still didn't work, I just ran it through these. Like, you could take a piece of solid metal, like a piece of rod, and run it through this and make all thread, stuff like that. So that's what I use, my Irwin kit, to cut the starting thread on the bolt to get that to work, and now I'm back in business. All right, so to put my gasket back together, I took some super glue. I didn't want to get it on any of the mating surfaces. And like I said, the webbing on this gasket is not really doing anything. It's just for easy placement of all these different circles. So the webbing is just floating above the exterior of the housing. Therefore, I matched it back up, got my lines back together, and put a drop of super glue, as you can see, on both of the joints, and then on the very bottom. My goal is just to keep this from falling as I'm positioning it in there. So I just want the gasket to stay in place. So I'll let this dry and cure, and it'll be fine. It should made up just fine. No leaks. Gotta avoid the leaks. So I couldn't find this gasket. I would have just replaced it, but the auto parts stores, like, they didn't have it. And let's move some of that away, because that is a surface right there that is mated. So I don't want the glue hardening up anywhere near that could cause a raised area. So I am just dabbing the glue away from that area. I just needed the glue in the crack, where the crack is. Right there and there. So all the spots that have blue, that's where the coolant comes in and stuff for the warmer. And well, that blue residue is because the coolant is like blue looking in these. So, all right, it's time for me to go, man. I gotta go work on some campers now. All right, so I'm gonna highlight this tool that I'm using. This is the Snap-on 1/4-inch body with a 3/8 anvil kit inside it. And because of what happened with this 1/4-inch ratchet, snapping that head off, which is right there, that I have already repaired and everything, I'm putting all this together, and a lot of times it's not enough back pressure to tighten up the bolt, which I just use this as a spinner. And I've pretty much been using this to reassemble everything. Put my extensions on here. Like, I'll start this bolt, and if it's not enough back pressure on it, I just use it as a spinner, kind of like a speed wrench, until I can get it by hand, and then I can use my judgment, my mechanics feel to torque it down without breaking them. I don't want to break anything else. So I've been using hand tools to reassemble, which I normally do anyway. But that was in a tough spot, and I never expected for that bolt. I thought it was like a high-grade bolt. It wasn't. But anyway, yeah, so this has been really useful during the reassembly process. When I was torquing those bolts down on that filter housing, I used this little tiny 1/4-inch ratchet so that I would not snap the bolts, because, you know, different guys, we all have different levels of strength, and I know that I could snap a bolt just with hand ratchet. So I used this little one, so I was really limited on how much torque I could put on these things, because most of these 10mm bolts that they have in this, they're not very tight at all. When I was taking it apart, it didn't take much at all to untorque them. So let me finish putting this together. I'll be back. All right, guys, I got the car back together, the tools put up. About 6 o'clock, I'm calling.